Good evening, America. It is 7 p.m. Thursday, June 11th, and this is Q News Tonight, the world's first
last night was really special.
LGBTQ daily evening news. It is time to queer up the news.
In tonight's headlines, we report NASCAR pisses off the racist hillbillies as it bans Confederate flag from races, venues, and more. J.K. Rowling doubles down on transphobic manifesto ignorance. And a gay guy rant on small-town Trump supporters is perfect for June Pride Month.
Other stories include Florida City passes LGBTQ non-discrimination law, court strikes down, city passes it again. Poland's president says no on gay marriage or adoption ever.
We report the bizarre as the Flash TV star is racist, sexist, homophobic, and now is unemployed.
In coronavirus headlines, we report new estimates for September bring 200,000 coronavirus deaths in the USA. And get ready, Tulsa, as Trump offends with a rally next week during COVID-19 and on Juneteenth to boot.
It's Thursday, so Dr. Howard Grossman is here for Q's Q&A on coronavirus and the LGBTQ community. All your questions will be answered.
And finally, our fun The Big Finish reports that New York City officially recommends glory holes for safe, socially distant hookups. Wow. Google Sheets has been hacked, and Google loves it. And the spreadsheets do more than Trump does to celebrate Pride. And JK, she who shall not be named, a billionaire who needs to buy a gay friend that says, girl? So good evening, America. It's 7 p.m. Tuesday, June 11th, 2020. It is time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories we are going to tell this evening on Q News Tonight.
Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight.
Well, again, good evening, America, and thank you for joining Q News Tonight. We are live, so anything can happen. This is a live show. Tonight, we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBT community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and this is my co-guest anchor, Misty Eyes, and my co-guest anchor, David Hopkins. Let's cue up the news. Tonight, we bring you Q headlines. The LGBTQ community in America is diverse. The LGBTQ community around the world is vast. So we bring you the bullet points of the queer news for today, Thursday, June 11th, 2020.
First, we queer up sports. NASCAR pisses off the racist hillbillies as it bans Confederate flag from races, venues, and more. Watch this.
Last night was really special. I thought, I sincerely thought that was the biggest race of my career, just with everything going on in the world and how we were standing up and making a positive message out of it.
A lot of fans are not happy about this at all. Some are claiming they will not return to NASCAR. They will not attend a race. What is your message to them?
We live in a very selfish world. I'm selfish myself, and this is so much more than about ourselves. This is about our brothers and our sisters that are suffering through a lot. And you look at the Confederate flag and how, yes, it may mean heritage to most, but to a group that is in a lot of pain right now, the African American community is in a lot of pain. That's a symbol of hate. And it brings back so many bad memories, signs of oppression from way back when. And there's no good that comes with that flag.
For more than 70 years, the Confederate flag was a common and complicated sight at NASCAR races. Through the Civil Rights era right on through the season opener at Daytona in February, The flag dotted infield campsites and was waved in grandstands by fans young and old. As the nation, and at last NASCAR, comes to grips with race relations in the wake of the death of George Floyd, it was time. The flag is no longer welcome in the stock car series. NASCAR banned the flag at its races and all of its venues Wednesday, a dramatic step by a series steeped in Southern tradition and proud of its good old boy roots. It must now convince some of its most ardent fans that it is truly time to keep the flag at home, leave those t-shirts in the drawer, scrape off the bumper stickers, and hit the track without a trace of the longtime symbol to many of racism and slavery. Policing the policy may prove challenging, and NASCAR did not offer details. The issues was pushed to the forefront this week by my husband who doesn't know it, Bubba Wallace, NASCAR's lone black driver and an Alabama native who called for the banishment of the Confederate flag and said there was no place for it in the sport.
This is incredible news. This is beautiful news, and it is about time. That flag has hurt many people, LGBTQ and black and brown, for years. It's about time.
I am a very proud Confederate, meaning I was born in the South, Virginia. But the Confederate flag does not mean pride, it means hate.
True.
So far, I've seen one driver announce that he will be resigning from the sport at the end of the season. Many sports commentators have noted that he is currently 0 for 31 in the races, and one made the comment that it's going to be very difficult for NASCAR to find someone to consistently place number 28th.
Sorry. Now we queer up culture. J.K. Rowling doubles down on ignorance with transphobic manifesto. Watch this.
Among Harry Potter fans on Twitter, the response to Radcliffe's post was spontaneous and spot on. Forget J.K. Rowling, the entire fandom seemed to decide all at once. Let's just pretend that Daniel Radcliffe wrote the Harry Potter books and go back to enjoying them. Problem solved. This appeared to open the floodgates for users who don't tolerate transphobia but are keen on deadpan humor. As one poster put it, isn't it amazing that Daniel Radcliffe both wrote and starred in Harry Potter? He's like the Lin-Manuel Miranda of wizardry. User Cricket Spillane jumped in with, I can't believe Daniel Radcliffe wrote all 7 Harry Potter books and starred in all 8 film adaptations. He is truly unbelievable.
J.K. Rowling this week has had the most educated and intellectual attack on the LGBTQ trans community in recent history. Perhaps even an anti-trans manifesto. Because of this, Q News Tonight devotes significant attention to this, trying to understand the moment. Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling published a nearly 4,000-word blog post on Wednesday, further reaffirming her controversial stance on the transgender community, which critics have called transphobic.
In a tweet sharing the blog post, Rowling simply wrote, "Turf Wars," TERF. It stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, a term which critics have called the author. Rowling addressed the origin of the claims that she's transphobic. Rowling wrote, I quote, "I mention all of this only to explain that I knew perfectly well what was going to happen. I expected the threats of violence, to be told I was literally killing trans people with my hate, to be called cunt and bitch, and of course for my books to be burned. Although one particularly abusive man told me he composted them."
In the blog post, Rowling states that she has 5 reasons for being worried about the new trans activism and deciding I need to speak up. Among these reasons, she mentions her charity for women and children, being an ex-teacher, her interest in free speech, a concern about, quote, the huge explosion in young women wishing to transition, and her experience as a victim of sexual and domestic abuse.
While mentioning the increase in young people coming out as transgender, Rowling questions whether there's a contagion fueled by social media that's behind the rise. At one point stating, "I've wondered whether if I'd been born 30 years later, I too might have tried to transition." She also brings up the topic of detransitioning, in which a trans person transitions back to their assigned sex at birth, calling it an increasing phenomenon.
Rowling reveals that she is a survivor of domestic abuse and sexual assault. She uses this traumatic history to say, quote, "deeply concerned about the consequences of the current trans activism. So I want trans women to be safe. At the same time, I do not want to make natal girls and women less safe." When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, and as I've said, gender confirmation certificates may now be granted without any need for surgery or hormones, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside.
That is the simple truth. Online, the reaction to the piece quickly bubbled up, with people on Twitter stating Rowling had written a transphobic manifesto. The LGBTQ advocacy group GLAAD also criticized Rowling's latest tweets, urging people to direct your rightful anger over J.K. Rowling's latest anti-trans comments into something positive, such as supporting organizations that help trans people.
J.K. Rowling has done the most educated attack on the LGBT community I have almost ever seen. And I completely agree with GLAAD. We should invest in the educational organizations that can continue to go toe to toe with her in educating why she's wrong.
And that's part of the problem, is it's very educated, but it's often using misguided facts or misappropriated facts that don't show the full picture. Abuse is terrible, and I'm sorry that she had to go through that, but she's completely negating the abuse that transgender people go through as well.
On a daily basis, you're correct. So I want to talk about a couple of things real quick. She is using fear, the weapon that has been used for a very long time against anti-trans movements. For example, the bathroom laws, saying that men at any time can walk into the bathroom and be with their women and children. That whole fear stopped when they started to realize that if they force birth certificates, trans men who are very passing now have the right to go into a woman's bathroom. She needs to consider that when she's talking. Also, she talked about detransitioning. That rarely happens. It is not a phenomenon. It does happen, and the reason it does happen is because sometimes people, once they've transitioned, realize it's not easy, and it's much harder than they realize. Shaving your face 3 times a day or getting electrolysis is very expensive. Hormone replacement therapy, surgery, it's all very expensive. And then we're dealing with a community that doesn't want to hire you. That is challenging and threatening all in of itself. She's very smart, but she's listening to the wrong things.
A very important story that we are going to closely follow here at Q News tonight. We continue in queuing up Queering Up Vote 2020 by reporting a gay guy rant on a small town talking about Trump supporters are perfect for June Pride Month. We talk about Andrew Joseph Duffer in an interesting post and rant about gay, small Texas townfolk, Donald Trump, Christians, racism, homophobia, and more, as he says, quote, "Keep your seatbelts fastened because we are now reaching the turbulent part of this video, and I guarantee you some panties are going to get in a wad." This gay guy in a Happy Hooker t-shirt says living in small-town Texas of less than 5,000 people, a place where, quote, racism and homophobia run rampant, posted a charming but angry 5-minute video rant where he explains the judgmental and self-serving way his supposedly Christian townsfolk treat black and gay people while supporting, simultaneously, President Donald Trump. Duffer suggests, quote, if you're a black person and you can act white and dress white, whatever the fuck that means, you're considered a white black person and you won't experience racism in its full capacity. Don't misunderstand me, he continues. You certainly will experience racism. It just won't be as bad. Gay people, same for you. If your parents are popular enough, well established enough, and you've been seen at church at least once, then you won't be destined for the lake of fire. All of these years, I thought it was the blood of Christ that brought salvation, but in this instance, it was my daddy's ability to do the townspeople's tax returns. Who would have thought? Okay, Mr. Duffer, you got our attention. Let's hear a bit more. Watch this.
Let's get started. I come from a country bumpkin podunk town in northeast Texas, population's less than 5,000, and I am pretty sure that all of you have safely arrived at the assumption that almost all of the people in this town are now Trump supporters. I haven't said anything to these people because they support Trump. You're entitled to your own opinion, however, basically just to tell me that they love and support me and to say, I don't agree with everything that Trump says and does, and then they tell me why they support him, and it's always something along the lines of, I think he's good for the economy, he's beneficial to my small business, and even I've had some like, he wants me to have an assault rifle and he keeps the illegals out. Well, good for you, Billy. You didn't pay the mortgage on your mobile home this month, but you have an AK-47. If you feel the need to go out of your way to tell someone that you are not as hateful as the candidate you support, does that sound like someone that you should be supporting? Does that sound like someone that should be running the country? You sound ignorant. You can't sit there and tell your black friends, your immigrant friends, your Muslim friends, your Hispanic friends, your LGBTQ friends that you love and support them, but you're supporting Trump. Because we've got Mexicans in cages. We have got black people getting killed in the street. We've got gays being stripped of their rights left and right. I mean, every day I wake up, Donald Trump is doing something to attack these people. He is not good for this country, and you sound dumb.
Next, we queer up the USA. Florida City passes LGBTQ non-discrimination law. Court strikes down. City passes it again. Watch this.
Today, the Jacksonville City Council is expected to vote on a new bill aimed at clearing up issues with the city's human rights ordinance. Last month, the Court of Appeals struck down Jacksonville's HRO, saying that it couldn't be enforced in its current state. The court ruled that instead of laying out specific changes to the city's anti-discrimination laws, the city's Office of General Counsel would amend them later. But that never happened. News4Jax reporter Ashley Harding spoke with the legal director for the Coalition for Equality. He says the new version will address that problem.
A 15-4 vote by the Jacksonville City Council restored the city's LGBTQ non-discrimination protections after a Florida appeals court struck it down due to legislative technicality in May. Mayor Lenny Curry has signaled that he will sign the ordinance. It will go into effect as soon as it reaches his desk. Soon after the city amended its human rights ordinance in 2017 to include sexual orientation and gender identity in its 28 sections prohibiting discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations, the Liberty Council, an anti-LGBTQ hate group that regularly challenges the expansion of LGBTQ civil rights, filed a civil suit seeking to overturn that ordinance. Now that the Jacksonville City Council has essentially repassed the same ordinance, it remains to be seen whether the Liberty Council will try and overturn it again. This time, the council made sure to follow all the technicalities required by law.
They need to stay in their lane. This law definitely 100% needs to pass.
Well, and the law has passed. It's just a question now in the second elimination of the technicalities if there will be any other legal challenges by the anti-LGBT group.
This is the perfect example of why the Civil Rights Acts need to be amended to offer LGBTQ protections on a national scale. These little podunk organizations shouldn't be able to rule the lives of people just because they live in a smaller town. They should be protected.
Now we queer up the world. Poland's president says no on gay marriage or adoption ever. Andrzej Duda will not allow gay couples to marry or adopt children if he's reelected as Poland's president later this month. He said, "It's a foreign ideology. There is no consent for this phenomenon to happen in our country in any way. LGBTQ rights seek to penetrate into our reality, sometimes by force." In the latest homophobic political trend that is erupting across Eastern Europe, the politicians signed a declaration called the Family Card that would also ban LGBTQ lessons in schools to protect children from so-called LGBTQ ideology. Duda is a staunch ally of Poland's ruling right-wing Nationalist Law and Justice Party, which strongly opposes LGBTQ rights, especially marriage equality and any legal recognition for same-sex couples. Duda's main opponent is Rafał Trzaskowski of the center-right opposition Civic Platform Party. Trzaskowski has taken a pro-LGBTQ stance throughout his entire presidential campaign, which has been criticized by religious conservatives.
Well, Poland is ground zero of anti-LGBT in the European Union, with the exception of Putin and Moscow. So this doesn't surprise me at all. I hope he's not reelected, but chances are he is going to be.
We keep covering Poland, and one thing I do have to say that does give me hope, it was pointed out by Misty that the opposition is considered right-center and is still pro-LGBTQ in that area. That's so far ahead of where we are even.
I truly hope that they learn from America's mistakes and they do not elect an anti-LGBTQ president.
We continue by queering up the USA tonight by reporting even West Virginia elects a transgender official. Finally, a first for the state. 26-year-old Rosemary Ketchum was elected Tuesday to the City Council of Wheeling, West Virginia, becoming the state's first out transgender elected official. In the nonpartisan election, Ketchum won 39.3% of the vote, beating Peggy Nigergile by just 15 votes. She will assume office on July 1st. Ketchum said, "Running for office was never in the plan for me. I didn't know what it would look like or how I would fit into that world."
Next, we queer up entertainment. Hulu's Love, Victor premiere moved to honor Juneteenth. Hulu's Love, Victor announced you might want to update your calendar. The streaming service announced today that it would be moving the series' original drop date from June 19th in honor of Juneteenth, the day slavery was abolished in America. Hulu said in the announcement, this date represents an important turning point for our nation and for human rights, and we believe that now more than ever, it deserves to have its own day in the spotlight. The good news is that Love, Victor will now drop 2 days earlier on Wednesday, June 17th. Love, Victor is set in the same universe as Love, Simon. It was originally slated to debut on Disney+, Disney's streaming service, but the spin-off series landed at Hulu.
Now we queer up entertainment. HBO's Legendary serves up loud, proud ballroom culture. FX fictionalized hit show Pose introduced many to the underground world of ballroom culture, in which historically Black and Latino LGBTQ youth compete in elaborate performances on a runway. Now, Legendary on HBO Max is surfing up real ballroom battles to the mainstream, with competitors in 8 houses vying to be declared the best and take home $100,000. During battles, competitors wear elaborate costumes, makeup, and wigs. They vogue, they dance, and they spin like acrobats and ice skaters. Producers said it's like if ballet and breakdancing were to have a baby. HBO points out the powerful thing is that you get to see a house that is filled with cisgender women. You get to see a house that is filled with nothing but gay men. You get to see a house that's filled with a cisgendered woman, a Hispanic man, a Black man, a drag queen, and a trans woman. You get to see all genres of everything.
Awesome. We queer up entertainment and continuing to report the Flash TV star is racist, sexist, homophobic, and now unemployed. Hartley Sawyer has been fired from The Flash after tweets containing racist, sexist, and homophobic references have resurfaced this week. In a statement, the 35-year-old actor, who has played Ralph Dibny, the elongated man on the superhero drama since 2017, said he was ashamed that he was, quote, capable of these really horrible attempts to get attention. Sawyer said, "I regret them deeply. This was not acceptable behavior. These were words I threw out at a time with no thought or recognition of the harm my words could do, and now have done today." Sawyer has deactivated his Twitter account, but the tweets have since circulated online. In them, he jokes about sexual assault, violence against women, and writing homophobic and racist tweets.
Next, we queer up business. An Alaska town supports LGBTQ couple denied service by a florist. Roses all around. Residents of Ketchikan, Alaska have rallied around a same-sex couple denied flowers for their wedding by a local florist. Tommy Varela and Stephen Kosak plan to marry in the Alaskan town August 1st and live there after their wedding. Last week they called a Ketchikan flower shop, Heavenly Creations, to inquire about flowers for the wedding. The owner said no because of them being gay. After posting about the encounter on Facebook, more than 100 people gathered to protest outside Heavenly Creations last Friday. Heavenly Creations owner Heather Dolan has declined comment to several local media outlets. Alaska is one of nearly 30 states without a law banning discrimination against LGBTQ+ people.
Well, next tonight, let's catch up on all of the news surrounding COVID-19 with our segment called Quarantine Quickies.
Quarantine Quickies. New estimates for September bring 200,000 coronavirus deaths in USA. Ashish Jha, head of Harvard's Global Health Institute, said Wednesday that the United States may see 200,000 deaths because of the coronavirus at some point in September. Jha added in a quote, "Because of our reopened planning, I'm really worried about where we're going to be in the weeks and months ahead. And that's just through September. The pandemic won't be over in September." Total U.S. coronavirus-related deaths totaled 112,754 on Wednesday, the most in the world. Jha said that was directly tied to the fact that the United States was the only major country to reopen without getting its case growth to a controlled level, a rate of people testing positive for the coronavirus remaining at 5% or lower for at least 14 days. New Mexico, Utah, and Arizona each saw its number of cases rise by 40% for the week that ended Sunday. According to a Reuters analysis, Florida and Arkansas are other hotspots.
Quarantine Quickies. Human trials begin for first antibody cocktail to treat, prevent COVID-19. Watch this.
Breaking news on Regeneron. Let's get right to Meg Terrell, who has a special guest. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Joe. That special guest is Regeneron Chief Scientific Officer Dr. George Yancopoulos with the news that the company has just begun the first clinical trials of their antibody cocktail for COVID-19. Dr. Yancopoulos, thanks for being with us this morning. You've laid out a pretty substantial clinical trial plan here with 4 different study arms evaluating both prevention and treatment with this drug.
A medicine that may treat and prevent COVID-19 is now being tested in patients in multiple sites around the United States. According to an announcement Thursday from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, it is the first trial of COVID-19 antibody cocktail in the United States. If successful, Regeneron hopes it could be available by fall. The clinical trial started Wednesday. Regeneron said its antibody cocktail will be tested for 4 separate study populations: people who are hospitalized with COVID-19, people who have symptoms for the disease but are not hospitalized, people who are healthy but at high risk for getting sick, and healthy people who have come into contact with a person who is sick. Regeneron is not the first company to get a COVID-19 antibody therapy into human trials. Eli Lilly and AbCellera started testing their antibody treatments in humans on June 1st.
Well, it's good news. I think saying that they're hoping to see something by fall, by everything that I've read in terms of medical expectation, and including Dr. Grossman, is that's pretty aggressive, but it's encouraging news.
You know, it's great to hear that things are getting to that stage of testing, but people don't realize that's still a long way to go before something's actually ready to roll out to the populace. So hopefully these tests work out and they can continue to the next step.
I'm a little impressed by the 4 different groups of people that they're willing to not experiment, but experiment on.
We continue in Quarantine Quickies by reporting, get ready, Tulsa, as Trump prepares to have a rally on the most important day for Black Americans on the site of the largest Black massacre and during pandemic. Watch this.
We're going to be starting our rallies. The first one we believe will be we're just starting to call up, will be in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Beautiful new venue, brand new, and they're looking forward to it. They've done a great job with COVID, as you know, in the state of Oklahoma.
Donald Trump will return to the 2020 campaign trail on June 19th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A move shockingly filled with racial symbolism and one almost certain to end in poorly reflection on the incumbent president. The selection of Tulsa as the place where Trump returns to the stump and campaign trail, and the date on which he is choosing to do it, both suggest that Trump's long whispered about race speech in the wake of ongoing protests and unrest following the death of George Floyd will happen next Friday, and at a campaign rally. no less, for the end of slavery Juneteenth celebration. Tulsa was the site of one of the most vicious attacks of racial violence in American history when, in 1921, a mob of white people attacked a section of the city known as Greenwood, or Black Wall Street, and murdered hundreds of African Americans. The event was the basis for HBO's Watchmen series, and June 19th, which has become commonly known as celebrated as Juneteenth, or Emancipation Day, commemorates the anniversary of the reading of General Orders No. 3, which officially informed slaves that they were free. It's hard not to see this as an intentional, by the Trump campaign, movement. While Oklahoma has no set limit on group gatherings, it's not a swing state, so there's no other obvious reason other than to address racial issues that Trump would stage his first rally in the state, and Tulsa particularly. And Trump could have done the rally on lots of days, 364 of them actually, that don't commemorate the emancipation of slaves. The White House Coronavirus Commission, of note, has been silent about the number of people that will gather at this political rally and its effect on spreading coronavirus, and then deaths.
This whole story has me so angry for so many reasons. The Black Wall Street massacre is one of the things that's pegged at. The riots we've had are nothing on that. It was a part of Tulsa where prosperous black people had built their businesses, built their homes, and white people came in and burnt down the entire area. There was something like 300 people killed, and it was terrible, and it has one of the many things that's led to the violence we're seeing now about, after George Floyd. This is either a tone-deaf move or a way to pander to his racist base, and he's either going to fail at both, or I don't even know. I don't see how this could be anything good for him.
Like you, David, I'm very confused about his intentions behind this. It kind of reminds me when he went and said, hey, LGBTQs for Trump, and wrote it in a magic marker on a flag and held the flag upside down. Like, hello, come on.
I agree with both of your comments. I slightly disagree with David. I take out the "or" in his statement. It is misguided and racist, not "or." It is both. We queer up commentary tonight, a little lighter and more interesting, in fact, by having commentary by reporting the undiscovered archive of Pride. Q News Tonight continues our celebration of June LGBTQ Pride Month in tonight's commentary called No Prides, No Marches this year. So we celebrate as we report Getty images, newly discovered images of the origins of gay pride. 51 years ago, in the early morning of June 28, 1969, New York City police raided a gay bar on Christopher Street. It's, of course, called the Stonewall Inn. Cop raids on gay bars were routine in those days, but this time, patrons fought back.
Violent clashes spread out across Greenwich Village over the following days. By the time order was restored, one thing was clear: the LGBT community would no longer tolerate harassment and intimidation.
In June 1970, gay rights activists marked the first anniversary of Stonewall riots with a march on Central Park, the first LGBTQ Pride Parade. Today, there are hundreds of Pride celebrations around the world.
But the riots had another lasting impact. They galvanized a growing movement and defined it with a sense of purpose. In that first year, several LGBTQ rights organizations and publications were born.
June Pride Month is a time for the LGBTQ community to come together and look back at Stonewall and see how far we've come since 1969.
But in 2020, with COVID-19 isolation, the horrors of Donald Trump and racism being demonstrated in the streets, you may perceive Pride, like all of 2020, to be canceled. So the excitement built when Getty Images revealed long-lost images of our Pride, our beginnings.
1 year later, on June 28, 1970, the modern Gay Pride Parade was born.
New York was again first along Christopher Street and Stonewall Inn and Central Park.
By the 1980s, New York City Pride had become one of the world's greatest LGBTQ protests.
The second major gay pride parade actually came the same day, on June 28, 1970, and in the second city of Chicago.
Like New York, Chicago grew in the 1980s to one of the greatest protest events in the world.
Chicago Pride in the 1990s had become a signature entertainment event in North America.
Los Angeles became the third major LGBTQ event on June 28, 1970.
Los Angeles would become one of the world's epicenters for the LGBTQ community.
By June 28, 2019, the Christopher Street Protest March becomes something completely different.
New York becomes the first World Pride and becomes the largest LGBTQ gathering in world history.
Live television and the longest parade in history comes full circle from the lost images of Getty.
So today, as we are watching the marches in the streets against police brutality, social injustice, and the need for change, we celebrate LGBTQ June Gay Pride Month and our similar need for change and protest.
And speaking of history, tonight we're broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center. The museum is in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We joke we are coming from the gayest place on planet Earth.
We'd like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale for making this set in this living museum possible.
Tonight is part 13 of Q's Q&A on coronavirus and the LGBTQ community, June 11th. This segment is designed to be unique in America to answer your questions about the coronavirus and the LGBT community's concerns during the pandemic.
Tonight we have an American pioneer in AIDS HIV medical treatment. With us is Dr. Howard Grossman, specialist in internal medicine with an emphasis on HIV. He was the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine. He's become nationally recognized as an educator on HIV issues and as an advocate for LGBTQ civil rights and the rights of our community.
And he has become a medical expert during pandemic for Q News Tonight. Welcome again, Dr. Grossman. It's been like you've been here about 3 years now, I think, as it feels. Before we get into viewer questions, another big week for medical and science in a pandemic, although it's kind of taken a news back step because of all of the protests. Before we take those viewer questions, any big issues for you that you have witnessed this week in pandemic?
Well, I think the biggest issue is the fact that we are smack dab into the second wave. You know, all the people who said it was coming in September, October, whatever, we are in it right now. We have 20 states that are experiencing numbers like they saw in March or higher. Arizona apparently is leading the way. Arkansas, Alabama, North Carolina, of course, Florida is way up there. There were 1,700 new cases reported in Florida today. And, you know, as you spoke about in the segment, this was a failure of planning to reopen. But it's not just that it was a failure of testing. It's a failure of people to understand what's really going on. And for this, I blame the president and his cohort, and I blame the media. Because people have not been given good instruction, and people have been given very conflicting information, and they've been given very complicated instructions that have made them throw their hands up in the air. So just for an example, my boss works in St. Lucie County, which is about 2 hours north of here. Mostly a lot of farmland. He calls it an inner city without a city. Lots of problems with drug use, lots of problems with crime. But a very fast-growing part of Florida along the Treasure Coast. When everything shut down, there were about 4 cases in that entire county of coronavirus. And because of the way things reopened, this week there are well over 100 cases admitted to the hospital. They do not have the hospital infrastructure to deal with this stuff. So this is the really scary thing, because we see it right here in Fort Lauderdale, as we've seen pictures all over the country, people packing into restaurants. And there are restaurants here that are doing things the right way. We'll come up to that with one of the questions. But there are restaurants that do it the right way, but I can tell you along, if people know, Las Olas Boulevard here, which is a major restaurant street. They are packing them in and standing deep in the restaurants. This is why this is happening.
You know, in conjunction, before we jump into the viewer questions, each week we ask you to grade America's response, the government's response, the White House's response. The grading for how we've done in this last week would be?
You know, I really think we need to give 3 grades. We need to give a grade to those states that are opening the right way, who are not experiencing these spikes. We need to give a grade to the states where this isn't happening the right way. Mostly red states, but California's in there, and let's not forget that significant parts of California are not Los Angeles and San Francisco. And so to those states I would give an F, because people are going to start dying in big numbers again with a lack of medical resources. And to the states that are doing well, you know, I certainly give them a B or a B plus, and but even New York, where people are the most scared, and I see lots of people on the subway, social distancing, wearing masks, staying far apart from each other. The subways are gleaming like people have never seen them before. But we still had pictures of people on 9th Avenue in front of a bunch of bars.
Yeah.
We see pictures coming out
in the gay community.
In the gay community, but we see pictures from Williamsburg in the straight community, with the bars also packed with young people.
Yeah.
It's a real failure of young people.
So B to B plus
right.
for those good states. And how about the government?
And for the government, for the coronavirus task force, I give them a not present. No. Because we haven't heard anything from them at all in the last bunch of weeks. I think they've basically been shut up.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, let's move into our viewer questions. And David, let's start with you.
Sure. A viewer asks, is it possible to spread coronavirus in open water like a lake, the ocean, or a pool?
Well, David, that was always a fear in the days of polio, because polio did spread in pools and things like that. This is not a virus that does that. This is a respiratory virus. If people are packed together in a pool, yeah, that's going to spread it, but it's not the water that's doing it.
Yeah, good.
That's good to know, yeah. A viewer asks, are ginger and cayenne pepper effective treatments for symptoms of COVID-19?
Well, you know, we've heard about them being used to treat fever over time, but, you know, I really don't have a good answer to that. They're certainly not things that are going to hurt.
There's no clinical studies that would suggest that there's any value of it. It would just be anecdotal of someone's guess.
Herbal medicine, you know, herbal medicines can have a good impact, and, you know, I'm just not as educated as I should be in that area.
Okay.
A viewer asks, can we safely dine at a restaurant considering masks will be off while eating?
No, here's a really good thing. So I can tell you what I've seen here in Fort Lauderdale, where we all are. And that is that there are a number of restaurants that are working at 25% capacity. One restaurant that I go to is all booths, and they put nobody in the booth in front of you or behind you or across from you. So they are taking a significant hit on their business, but they are keeping people apart. You come in with a mask, you take your mask off at the table, the staff is wearing masks. So, you know, exposure is limited. And really, this is what we have to live with for 2 years, is harm reduction. We cannot eliminate.
Harm reduction.
Harm reduction, same thing we've
talked about. First time I've heard that phrase.
Same thing we've talked about for HIV. This is all percolating around the, you know, in the medical internet, because people realize you cannot eliminate harm, but you can help people to.
So if you eat in a restaurant, given you're taking your mask off, obviously, to eat, if the restaurant is providing a surety or security feeling for you in terms of how they are socially isolating the distancing of the patrons eating in the restaurant, you feel much more comfortable with that situation.
They're checking people's temperature at the door. People who are coughing or sneezing are asked to leave or to get takeout. You know, and they're limiting exposure as much as possible. Now, one thing that might also work for people who are really worried is a face shield, because with a face shield you can put the fork under the shield, and you know, again, it's not risk
elimination. Kind of defeats
elimination.
the purpose of dining out, though, when you have to feel that way.
It does.
Misty, you have next?
We do have another viewer question. Cases increasing and it's hot out. Will summer have any effect on COVID-19?
Only because people are hanging out more. In winter, people shelter in their house anyway, in cold places. There's no effect of the heat in summer, and we're not seeing the increase because it's summer. We're seeing the increase because people are being stupid.
There's a good, people are being stupid is the reason why we're seeing it.
Well, because Al, it boils down to something very simple. And, we've been talking about this for weeks. Simple messages are what you need in healthcare. And the message is, put on your damn mask when you go into a crowd.
Say it again.
And wash your hands. Don't worry about that package you got from Amazon. You don't have to leave it outside for 3 days. You don't have to buy that ultraviolet wand. Open it up, wash your hands, take the cardboard out.
We've moved into we've moved into the 4th month of doing this, and you're returning to the exact same things we said in week number 1.
And I will tell you, I was watching Chris Hayes last night. First time I've heard anybody in the media say, gee, maybe we should focus on wearing masks, and that should be the message. Just like, thank you, it's about time.
Yeah. We've done commentary that masks should be mandatory, and smoking abolition is proof that you can do it legally. David, you have another question.
Yes, another viewer asks, an NBC medical advisor believes he contracted COVID through his eyes. Is this true, and do we need eye protection?
Well, in hospitals, they are wearing eye protection, especially if when they were doing the nasal swab, people are going to cough in your face.
I hate the nasal swab.
It is a mucus membrane, and it is possible to get viruses through it. It's not common outside the healthcare setting.
So, in general population, you don't think eye protection is something that we should focus on?
No, unless people are coughing and sneezing in your face or spitting at you, maybe that way.
Or they're spitting on you. Right. Okay, well then that's a whole different issue. If they're coughing and sneezing around you, you have much bigger problems than through your eyes.
Right.
Okay.
Another viewer asks, if multiple vaccines and FDA approves more than one, how will consumers know which ones to take?
That's going to be tough, and it's going to be up to the scientific community to be very clear about what data exists. So we realize something that we're seeing is that there are multiple websites where people can post research that's not peer-reviewed, that the data isn't examined by an independent team. They just post whatever they want to post, and it gets picked up by the media. That's very different than an article in the New England Journal or in the Lancet or in the Annals of Internal Medicine. These are places where you have to look, where those are going to be reviewed by panels of people to make sure that the information is real.
Are you confident that the medical information will transmit out to the general population well?
That's always a tough one, because scientists aren't really good at putting things in simple terms that people can understand. But hopefully some people in the media, and not Dr. Oz, will actually be there to explain it. You got people like Bob Bazell at NBC News who are very clear and scientific. Lori Garrett, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning author on the epidemiology. These are the voices you want to listen to.
Yes, and Dr. Grossman at Q News tonight.
Yes.
Our next question is?
So a viewer asks, and I just want to start this by saying one of the obvious answers is that we're having a dad bod summer. But besides mental health, what are some of the physical side effects of sedentary lives in quarantine?
Well, physical health is a big one. People aren't exercising. So it's really important that people think about ways that they can bring exercise into their daily lives, whether it's walking up and down stairs. If you live in a building with stairs, everything here in Florida is flat, so it's walking. Trying to get some exercise. You're right, everybody's gaining weight, including me. I'm back on Weight Watchers. And I think people are starting to realize they need to do something about the weight gain and the way they've been eating and drinking at home these last 3 or 4 months. I think those are the big one. The other thing is that people are not seeking medical attention. People are having heart attacks and strokes and significant, very complicated problems and not going to the doctor and not going to emergency room. The hospital is a safe place for you to go. The hospitals have infection control set up where they separate people who may be infected from people who are not. And really, people need to make sure that they take care of them.
I want to return to that soundbite, Dr. Grossman. Going to your doctor and going to a medical facility is safe and is encouraged.
Yeah, that's really good.
Doctors are taking really important steps to be proactive in setting things up. We're lucky here in Florida. We have more space. We have parking lots people can wait in before they go into the doctor.
Right.
Limiting exposure.
Another viewer asks, how sick is sick enough to call out of work?
If you're coughing or sneezing, stay out of work. People don't want you around spreading by coughing and sneezing. If you have a fever, stay out of work. These are very simple rules, I think. And if you have a question, call your human resources department and ask them, I'm feeling this, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, good.
Another viewer asks, my kids are really miss their friends. Is there a way to have a safe play date?
That's a big one. I think one of the creative ways that people are coping is by setting up small pods of people who are the people they associate without masks. I mean, your kids are going to go crazy for 2 years by being isolated. I don't think that's a healthy thing for our children. But having a small group of families with children that you are the only ones that your kids associate with, maybe teaching kids about wearing masks. Little kids are going to pull them off, but older kids,
and you've told us, and you've commented on this before, in Asia, Japan, in China, that is something that they teach their children very, very early, and they come into seasonal flu, and children wear masks.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. And they can get really cute ones.
Yeah. Misty.
Yeah, another viewer asks, are there any new symptoms to be aware of?
I think that this goes to another question. I think the next question as well, so you might want to ask that one. That the next question is really about how people are doing after they recover from acute illness.
Yeah, so let's ask that question. In general, a viewer asked about how ICU COVID patients are faring. So let's combine both of those.
Well, ICU COVID patients are going to have significant impacts just because they've been intubated, they've been in comas, they lose weight, we've seen the pictures of people. It's very hard to keep people alive in an ICU for an extended period of time, and they really suffer for it. And they may have long-term lung damage. They've had actually a strong immunologic response. So remember, as I can see it, this is a two-phase illness. There's the first phase, which is virologic. So the virus is attacking, giving you fevers, chills, and shortness of breath, and things like that. But then people get better for a day or two. And then the second phase is an immunologic phase where the virus has stimulated your body's immune response to go wild and attack organs all over the body. So that's the thing that's sending people to the hospital and killing people. That immunologic response doesn't just end completely, and people are experiencing some long-term things. I was just talking to a friend of mine in New York yesterday who was very ill at home, didn't go to the hospital. He suddenly developed allergies. He never had allergies in his life, and we're hearing that a lot. We're hearing people talk about some skin things where they're getting skin lesions that they never had.
COVID toes.
Yep, all kinds of, immunologic, vascular complications because the immune system has become deranged. And that's why some of the therapies that they're being proposed not only include antiviral medications and antibodies, but also include things that will suppress that immune response. Some of the drugs we use for multiple sclerosis, in fact, which is also a disease where your body's attacking itself, may become effective. So those are being studied.
Today I heard on the news, for the first time in quite a while, a medical supply observation. And David, you have a question?
Yeah, one of our viewers has asked, is there still a risk of medical supplies shortage, or has that been resolved?
Well, I think the medical supplies have really ramped up. You see hospitals with ranks of respirators and things like that. We know that unless Donald Trump visits your factory where you're making swabs that you have to throw out because you refuse to wear a mask or any kind of protective gear, there seems to be an adequate supply of those. The respirators are going to be the big key. If we see a huge number of really sick people all over the country in places where they don't have good medical systems in place, where people travel 4 hours to get to a city where they can get medical care or have an ICU, there's going to be a real problem.
Well, that ends our questions tonight that you have asked. As always, we thank Dr. Howard Grossman. I was sitting here thinking when he said that this is going to go on for another 2 years and the medical community doesn't communicate as clearly as they should. his voluntary job here at Q News tonight is assured because we need that clarity. I remind you, South Florida especially, Dr. Grossman is gay, is a member of our community, and is a great choice. You're still gay, right?
I'm still gay. I wear the buttons.
Yeah, right. And he operates a 501c not-for-profit medical clinic, Midway Medical, right here, just moments from the World AIDS Museum. We encourage you to check him out. He's a great resource for you. Antibody testing, COVID testing, and of course, general practitioner for all of your medical needs. And as always, Dr. Grossman, we thank you for being with us this week. It's a very important moment. On Thursday nights, I have so many of my friends go, oh, it's Thursday, you're going to talk about COVID for the LGBT communities. So we are accomplishing the clarity of what we want to accomplish, and that's thanks to Dr. Grossman. So thank you.
Thank you, Al. Can I give that one party message?
Sure.
Wear your damn mask.
There we go. Say it again, Doctor.
That's right. All right, we end tonight's broadcast with The Big Finish. These are short story mentions of LGBTQ news or news with a gay perspective. So here we go first on Q News tonight, and I can't wait to jump into the first one. As Dr. Grossman's still sitting here, he asked me about it as soon as he arrived tonight. In The Big Finish, New York City officials recommend glory holes for safe, socially distanced hookups. Wow.
Well, Dr. Grossman may be the medical official, but as the resident glory hole official, I approve this message.
You are not an official on anything, David. Calm down. But who knew anonymous sex would be safer sex?
Who would have ever thought that a medical advisory commission for one of the largest cities in the world would say, you know, glory holes, they're pretty good for you. I endorse them. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. We continue in The Big Finish by reporting on Little Britain. Now, you may not be aware of it. It's a show in Britain. They were removed because of a blackface issue and very inappropriate humor. And after that happened, their sales of their DVRs and DVDs increased 200,000% after Netflix announcement.
I'm David Thomas, and I'm the only gay in this village. I love this show. It's one of those shows like South Park where they intentionally are as offensive and bigoted and terrible as they can be. It's hilarious, but terrible at the same time.
Of course, everybody wants it. We all want what we can't have, and David hit the nail right on the head. I watched the show in 2003 through 2005. I loved it. I thought it was hilariously offensive, and I rewatched it about last year with my husband. Computer says no, computer says no, and he had no idea what I was talking about. Let's watch it. Now, through the lenses of my intersectionality, I was like, how did I ever like this show? It's so offensive about the gays. It's so offensive about fat people. It's so offensive about trans people, especially trans people. And then, yeah, I'm not surprised.
You know why I love this story is it's going to help us define what's next. It's like the ban discussions that are going on Gone with the Wind that was done in 1939.
Yeah.
It's totally inappropriate, but it was 1939. How we respond next to our racism, homophobia, transphobia, whatever it is, that's going to be really important. I think our society is getting ready in a very healthy way to talk about appropriateness. Complete bans are not appropriate. In The Big Finish, happy birthday to the Game of Thrones giant, Peter Dinklage. He's 52.
So I don't really have anything funny to say about this, but I do have to say I was very upset when he was cast as Tyrion Lannister, because Tyrion was supposed to be ugly, and yeah, you can call me anytime.
The word giant is, of course, used tongue-in-cheek because he is a little person. But I will tell you, Tyrion Lannister totally made the entire Game of Thrones for me. He had the absolute best quotes. I drink and I know things. Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like an armor and it can never be used against you. Happy birthday. You're a rock star.
I'm sorry, Misty Eyes is completely wrong.
Oh.
Completely.
Well, that's a first.
Peter Dinklage, it was joked in Tyrion's character on the show that the little person was a giant. In reality, in real life, Peter Dinklage has joked he's a giant. And it's not his standing height that he's a giant for. That's the joke that has been made on Game of Thrones and in real life. And my favorite t-shirt that I own is "I drink and I know things." What an amazing phrase. It says it all.
Truth.
In the big finish, Google was hacked. Did you hear? Google Sheets. And Google loves it because the spreadsheet is hacked in rainbow colors, making Google Sheets hack more celebratory for June Pride Month than anything our president has done.
I mean, of course, an inanimate object could care more about people than our president. Have you seen the guy?
Truth. I see you, Google. I see your true colors. That's why I love you. So don't be afraid and let them show forever.
Yes. And corporately gigantic, quadrillion billion dollar Google, you responded in exactly the right way. We love the hack.
Yes.
No attack, no legal, no nothing. We loved it. And we loved that you embraced the LGBT community by doing it. The big finish. Lizzo, bam! She tells body-shaming critics to mind your own fucking business and worry about yourself.
Why fans great till they gotta be great? Let the girl be herself. She's beautiful any size. She's been working out for health reasons, but she is thick and juicy.
She will always be thick and juicy. And what I always say is, "Psst, I found your nose. It's in my business." And I truly believe your opinion of me is none of my business.
Exactly. And the only thing bigger than Lizzo is the attitude that Lizzo has, and I love it. Now get healthy. I want you to get healthy, but I love the bigness of you. In the big finish, she who shall not be named is a billionaire. And girl, you need to get a gay friend that says, girl?
That girl needs to order herself a sassy gay friend so she can have it on the bedside to stop the bullshit that's coming out of her mouth and onto her Twitter.
I don't even think a gay friend could help educate this woman. The fact of the matter, again, we talked about it earlier, she's brilliant and she's very confused. And she's going to prove how she's right by proving how she's wrong.
Brilliance does not overcome ignorance. JK, you're ignorant. However, you have given the LGBT community the perfect opportunity to educate everyone else on your ignorance. And we're going to use you as our foil to stand up finally. The L, G, B, and Q are going to stand up finally for the T.
Work.
And that is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Spill the tea, David. Keep it coming. Remember, if it's important to the LGBTQ community, it's important to Q News tonight. But you must help us. Please click subscribe on YouTube and share this news.
We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. This is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the entire world. We've proved it tonight. Your community needs your support.
And you are not alone. We will get through this crisis.
We are here with you. And this is Q News Tonight.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Al Ferguson, and on behalf of my co-guest anchor, Misty Eyes, and David Hopkins, we will see you daily at 7 p.m. Good night, America.
Night.